cut her fire department's budget too. LA couldn't even get a simple evacuation alert right. Last night, the whole county panicked.
We're just mapping out here are under mandatory evacuations. And obviously you can hear all of our phones are going off some type of alert, an evacuation warning, it looks like.
Yeah, my alert reads, This is an emergency message from the LA County Fire Department. An evacuation warning has been issued in your area.
Yeah.
This is what this looks like.
Remain vigilant of any threats and be ready to evacuate. Gather loved ones, pets, and supplies. Continue to monitor local weather news and the webpage alertla.org for more information.
Yeah, so these alerts come, based on where you are.
It's like on my phone.
Yeah, and here we are in West LA, and we're getting an alert. We'll have to look into why.
Guess what? False alarm. No need to evacuate. The city said.
Woke DEI, false alarm.
Sorry, it was an accident. They're going to give people heart attacks. People are leaping into their EVs and speeding out of town. Oops, never.
Why are you defending this? Look at what our hometown looks like. Defending what? Do you think I'm defending wildfires or local government incompetence? I've criticized it plenty. As a matter of fact, me criticizing Jesse Waters' idiotic commentary here is quite literally me continuing to defend the truth. I don't defend anything but what the correct assessment is. Okay? Is it competence that Jesse Waters is pointing out? Or is he randomly making insane speculations about how it's Guatemalan migrants that are homeless that are causing these fires to happen? How is that actually pointing to the incompetence? Critical budget needs that they had. All of a sudden, she's no longer a woke gay lesbian.
Been clear that the fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are.
But for some reason, and I think we know why, the mayor and the governor are still getting a pass for most of the legacy press. Listen to a governor who's grappled with his share of disasters.
If Newsom was a Republican, you guys would you would have him nailed to the wall for what they're doing over there. When we had the Surfside Tower collapse.
You seem to not understand what living in a country full of Nazis means. Yes, you're right. I'm totally oblivious to that. Thank you, Ginny, for Palestine. I have no idea what it looks like. Even though I cover it every day.
People from the Washington Post trying to blame me for it immediately without having any facts. That mayor of LA, if that were a Republican mayor, I could only imagine what that would do. I mean, the fires are at high risk and you try to go to Africa?
But Gavin Newsom says none of this is my fault. The real battle we need to wage here is against the people blaming me.
We've got to deal with this misinformation. There were hurricane force winds of mis and disinformation, lies. People want to divide this country, and we're going to have to address that as well. And it breaks my heart as people are suffering and struggling that we're up against those hurricane forces as well. And that's just a point of personal privilege that I share that with you because it infects real people that are out there, people I meet every single day, people the mayor's been meeting with, and they're having conversations that are not the
Nazis killed dozens of my blood relatives, and you guys casually say our country's filled with Nazis? How do you expect to be taken seriously by people who have actual beef with Nazis? Wait, what are you talking about? You think people... Dude. You think that we should just wait until the final solution is implemented? Like, what's going on? Donald Trump has actively said he's running. Yes. Our country is filled with Nazis. It is true. What are you talking about? 100%. What do you think mass deportation of 20 million people looks like? Like, this is silly. There is no. What is this like? Oh, I'm going to gatekeep the word Nazi. We're in the initial stages of the Madagascar plan being implemented against undocumented migrants. There's a massive, meaningful gap between where we're at now and actual Nazis. No, there isn't. No, you just think someone is a Nazi after the fact. That's the problem. That's the issue. This is a silly, thought-terminating way of approaching what is happening in front of you. It completely undermines the necessity for learning about history. We shouldn't learn about history at all. Okay? It is not useful to learn about history. Yeah, I will wait until not even 5.9 million. I will wait until 6 million people are ruthlessly slaughtered, and only then will I feel comfortable calling the perpetrators Nazis. Like it's not like Hitler came in and immediately started murking people, okay? You think that only after the 6 millionth Jewish person that was killed in death camps, only then were they considered Nazis, or do you think it built up to that point? This is why intent is more important when making assessments about genocide. Otherwise, it would simply be a post-mortem analysis.
Typical conversations you'd have at this time, and you wonder where this stuff comes from. And it's very damaging as well.
This is what Democrats do. They screw up and then call their critics liars. But this time, that's hard to do when your whole city is still on fire.
I think they were Nazis when they invaded my country, Czechoslovakia, and implemented a systematic genocide. We are not even close, man. Look up Reinhard Heydrich and tell me who the equivalent of that is in our country. Do you think that before they actually invaded Czechoslovakia and implemented a systemic genocide that you shouldn't have called them a Nazi or been afraid of what they're doing? I'm not a debate nerd, but that is just not a logical argument. If they start doing Nazi shit, I'm with you guys. At what point do you think Adolf Hitler can be considered a Nazi? Is it when he wrote Mein Kampf? Is it after the Reichstag fire? Is it the initial steps of the Madagascar plan that was supposed to be a forcible deportation of all Jews and suspected Jews and socialists? Because a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about predates the invasion. I understand what your concerns are. The problem is, I've already addressed those concerns and you refuse to hear it. Okay? Fascism doesn't happen overnight. One moment you're not a fascist and then the next you are. It doesn't work like that. Okay? It happens over time. It happens over decades sometimes. When you are actively running a campaign of mass deportation of 20 million people that you want to put into camps. I disagree with how slippery you think the slope is. Do you think mass deportation of 20 million people is valid enough to say that a person is a Nazi or a fascist? Fascist, yes. But not Nazi fascism. Like maybe Mussolini style fascism I'm on board with, but like not Nazi fascism. Is that what you're saying? Is that what it is? What a silly, pedantic argument. It's a catch-all term for fascist. Okay? That's it. Literally, yes, the rhetoric is meaningfully different. No, it's not, because ultimately you arrive at one can only be a Nazi after the fact. That's the problem. You consider someone to be a Nazi only after the fact. That's the difference. Okay? This is a useless argument around semantics. Yeah, chatters be like, one can only be a Nazi if they come from a specific region in Europe.
Nobody
Also, Nazis were fascists.
wants to hear politicians whine about misinformation during a crisis. People have lost their homes and everything in it, their most cherished belongings, their great-grandfather's watch, their mother's wedding ring.
You are breeding hate by labeling people the worst thing possible for bad opinions. I don't believe it's beneficial to label people that way. It just makes people whose opinion could be changed to hate you and disregard you. Yeah. If you are on board with the deportation of 20 million people, okay, if you're vociferously defending that, and you get more upset at being called a Nazi or a fascist in that process, then you are a Nazi. That's it. This is incredibly stupid. I'm breeding hate because I'm critical of the lies that people tell, racially charged lies that people tell, in an effort to justify the mass deportation of 20 million people. I am the one who is divisive and hateful. What are we doing? Think. Think for a moment. Okay? Please. It's always funny for a lot of privileged people that refuse to check their own personal blind spots. It's always funny when they go, it's not actually the racialized act of violence that is the problem here. It's you pointing it out. You're the one who's being divisive. So many people slide in to that comfortable boundary of reactionary thinking, like instantly. Check my previous message for the thick chatters, please. Let's hear it. Well, nothing there. Okay, no previous message that was sent. Let's continue with Jesse Waters.
Priceless family heirlooms. Some have no insurance. The home is all they had. And they turn on TV and the governor's complaining about his approval rating and what someone wrote in the comment section. This fire has unleashed a fury in Hollywood. Actors and actresses who would never dare attack a Democrat because it could cost them their jobs are lacing into Gavin. Here's actress Sarah Foster, quote, "We pay the highest taxes in California. Our fire hydrants were empty. Our vegetation was overgrown. Brush not cleared. Our reservoirs were emptied by our governor because tribal leaders wanted to..."
This is just a rehashing of all of the right-wing talking points. Some of it is true. And some of it is just like silly nonsense that Donald Trump primed people into thinking is the real reason.
Save fish. Our fire department budget was cut by our mayor, but thank God drug addicts are getting their drug kits. LA Mayor and Gavin Newsom resign. Your far-left policies have ruined our state and also our party. Even Morning Joe can't defend this. And they've defended everything, and I mean everything.
We don't know the exact causes for the complete failure of government to be able to protect these homes. I don't think we can say it's the smelt alone. We don't know what it is, but I do think it's going to be like Hurricane Katrina. I mean, the infrastructure has been slashed. It's hard to hear people say in one of the richest cities in the world that, oh, we don't have enough water to protect people's homes.
We're witnessing the collapse of liberal society. Everything's on fire, falling apart at the same time because of stupidity, corruption, and radical priorities. Reservoirs are bone dry, but California Democrats are spending millions on DEI, migrants, and drug addicts. Now, Primetime tried to save California. Remember the last couple of years? We finally threw up our hands and said, we can't save it. if they don't want to be saved. After 30,000 acres have been torched and the fire's still not contained, in the capital of Sacramento, they just called an emergency session to battle Trump.
Is now the right time to have a special legislative session on allocating money to fight Trump in a way that you could already do without a special legislative session?
So I'm here to address these.
Yeah, when it happens in red states, it's the act of God. When it happens in blue states, it's DEI and woke liberal policies. And also gay immigrants that are homeless, that are doing arson, and also looting while doing arson. They're doing arson and looting at the same time. Yeah.
These wildfires.
And sometimes it's actually happening in red states because of blue states that have weather machines that are blowing the winds in the direction of the red states to kill them.
This is a historic wildfire. This is a historic event. These wildfires, as I mentioned, are going to be quite possibly some of the worst wildfires and disasters in the state.
While people are trying to understand what's going on and are worried about disaster relief, worried about the ability to get homeowners insurance, your chamber gavelled into a special legislative session to prepare for Donald Trump. Again, is now the right time for that?
So certainly our focus right now is Speaker Ashley. At this moment, my colleagues and I, we are acting with great urgency to ensure.
We are already in it, and it's going to get so much worse. California's been trying to destroy Western civilization. California is perhaps one of the greatest propaganda machines for the very concept of Western civilization.
Did it. Primetime's calling for a federal takeover of California. When a state becomes this dangerous and the government becomes this reckless, where the lives of millions of American citizens are being destroyed, their homes obliterated, their infrastructure annihilated, we can't wait for a recall election. This is an issue of national security. This is a public health emergency. We know they have public health emergency powers. Remember the pandemic? Invoke them. The elected officials in California can't be trusted. They're criminally negligent. Look at what we're seeing. This is a war scene. And if anyone thinks the people who are responsible for this catastrophe are going to somehow rebuild,
I think, for the record, I think this is a pretty decent template for what is to come. Climate change supercharged extreme weather conditions lead to once in a lifetime, once in a century natural disasters that are going to become more and more commonplace. And in the process, when it happens in a blue state, they're going to say it's because of woke homosexuals. And when it happens in a red state, they're going to either say it's because of God, an act of God, or still like a weather machine or whatever. It's a purposeful distraction away from the actual reasons as to why these things seemingly happen more frequently. And that's it. Like, you're going to see this more and more, especially because these kinds of these kinds of natural disasters are going to happen way more frequently due to weather patterns changing dramatically. That's it. Straight up. This is the template. This is what they're going to keep doing over and over again. You're going to see a lot worse instances of this. It will probably lead to vigilante justice and a lot more violence dished out against people who take matters in their own hands, who see their fellow neighbors as the villains, as to why these things are happening.
You're out of your mind.
That's where we're at.
If they're left in charge to rebuild LA, they're going to steal the money. Nothing's going to get rebuilt. Everyone's going to get screwed.
Are you saying that those in charge of California are climate change deniers? No. I'm saying that those in charge of California are even worse than the typical right-wing climate change denier, because they will look at climate change and go, I see it, I hear it, we trust the science, and then continue not taking the initiative. because they are capitalists. This is the consistent pattern with the Democratic Party. And before people say, well, they're better than the Republicans, yes, I recognize that they are better than the Republicans. You are absolutely correct. But they still very obviously do not take the necessary precautions. Okay? That's why the incompetence and the mismanagement from the LA County is very important to point to here. If you have money in the budget, but you're cutting the fire department's resources when they're desperately demanding more money to combat these sorts of disasters before they occur, and giving extra funds to the tune of $130 million to the police department, okay, when the LA Fire Department is asking for 71 additional people to hire, and you end up forcing them to cut their existing labor force by 30 people, okay, while simultaneously you're like, we really, really, really need to hire more cops. It doesn't matter if you're a climate change denier or not. It doesn't matter. They're just marginally better than the Republican Party in terms of trying to manage this. Okay?
This is biblical level destruction, and the city of LA is hosting the Olympics in 4 years. There's no way we can showcase LA to the world. A full federal takeover is needed. Invoke the Stafford Act. The state's overwhelmed. Martial law might have to be declared. Primetime praise for the poor people of LA and hope we can put out this fire before.
Fighting for a better future. Tonight, an inside look at the partnership between the state and CAL FIRE as they prepare for the brunt of fire season.
It's a really good inside look at something you'll see only on CBS 13. Andrew Hobner takes us to a correctional camp in Nevada County.
Washington Ridge Camp doesn't feel like a correctional facility.
This place, it's a chance to figure it out, you know, get away from the hustle and bustle.
To the men clad in orange jumpsuits, it is, and it isn't.
It pretty much takes away the CDCR part of this experience. When we go out to fires, the public is very supportive, very happy to see us. The captains treat us as men.
Jamil Thomas is serving time for a weapons charge and says the prison environment is very different than what we see at camp.
It's very racially segregated. So say this person over here does something I have nothing to do with. That involves me now. This place here is completely, you are held accountable.
In the mornings, he goes outside.
It's so crazy that these dudes are so desperate for like a crumb of being treated like human beings, which they are, that they're like, this is great. I get paid sometimes $26 a day. Okay. And I get treated like a human, you know? People are appreciative. People offer dignity to me.
In the mountain air and reads books on spirituality.
And we got a saying, I mean, you know, if you're not happy here, you're just not happy.
Firefighters here aren't paid much at all by normal standards, but even from within, there is a push for them to make a more livable wage.
We have no issues in camp treating these guys with the respect of a firefighter. That's what they are.
Inside the camp, individuals...
Will this program give them a pathway to employment when released? No.
Inmates and groups have responsibility for different aspects of the firefighting team.
They treat us just like, you know, basically a firefighter. We are firefighters.
And for men like Thomas who are hoping to better themselves after prison, that's how they want it.
This is something I'm interested in doing, and it gave me a chance to really figure out and see, hey, being a good person and doing good things, there's rewards and benefits to that.
Fred Money with CDCR says the program reintroduces a degree of humanity back within his correctional officers.
Is it recidivism at all? No, these programs are actually really good. But the problem is it's being done in a way that is maxing out. Like it's being done in a way where it's basically, I mean, it's slavery, right? All matter of training that you get that is adequately compensated can be incredibly helpful in reintegration. Okay? Incredibly helpful in reintegration. The issue, on the other hand, is that these guys don't actually get the jobs. It is unimaginably rare for an inmate to be able to get gainful employment in a fire department, especially in Los Angeles County, after they get out. They're only good when they're doing this job for $5 to $10 a day, sometimes upwards of $27 a day. On the exact opposite of the spectrum are private fire brigades, where people get upwards of $7,000 a day protecting properties such as former LA mayoral candidate Rick Caruso's property in the Pacific Palisades. We will be talking to some of these inmate firefighters later today. Can you say more about why they don't get employment after getting out? Because there is desperate need for extra hands in combating wildfires, but there's not enough money. They don't want to hire them. LA Fire Department also has a LA Fire Department, I think, has a rule where you can't be a felon if you want to ever get hired. The thing is, the LA Fire Department is also one of the most sought after jobs, and the same for New York Fire Department as well. These are jobs with a decent pension plan. These are decently paid jobs in general, and it's a very competitive job to get. It's a super competitive market. So they're only good to fight these fires if they can be used as slave labor to basically displace the remaining Los Angeles Fire Department's existing firefighting numbers. They do it for much cheaper, you know? Also, before you look at the situation and assume that these are like rapists or whatever, no violent offenders are allowed to even take part in this training program. Okay? Like, you can't, as far as I understand, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to take part in the training program at all. Yeah, average Los Angeles Fire Department firefighter yearly pay in the United States is approximately $94,390, which is 98% above the national average. Yeah. California inmate firefighters are legally barred from serving as full-time firefighters after prison. Like, this is literally a law, an existing... a California licensing law that bans many ex-offenders from working as full-time firefighters, even if they were trained to fight fires while in prison, was upheld last week by a federal judge. Since World War II, California has relied on prisoners to fight the state's immensely destructive wildfires. But once released from prison, the state makes it almost impossible for former prisoners to earn a living fighting fires full-time. Nearly all local fire departments require certification as an emergency medical technician, yet under California law, EMT certification is off limits to anyone who has ever been convicted of 2 or more felonies, has been released from prison for any felony in the past decade, or has been convicted of any 2 or more drug misdemeanors in the past 5 years. Adding to the absurdity, people with multiple felonies can still serve as volunteer or seasonal firefighters, though the latter is only a part-time and provides far less job security and fewer benefits than working year-round in a municipal fire department. This is This basically openly betrays the good reason for why these training programs exist. These training programs are good for reintegration, right? It is supposed to lower recidivism, the likelihood to reoffend, because if you have a gainful employment opportunity in the aftermath of your prison sentence, you are significantly less likely to fuck that up. Okay? It is one of the most it is one of the best possible ways of engaging in the rehabilitative process. The issue, however, is that that's very obviously not the point. They want them as slave labor that can be easily expended. Crazy thing that firefighter jobs is competitive. Meanwhile, the LAPD and NYPD, all you need is to graduate from high school in the 6 months class to shoot people. Yeah, of course. This is an infinitely more difficult job. Yes, fighting fires is an infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more difficult job than being a cop. I think we all agree with that, right? I hope that people understand that. That's a crazy thing. Anyway. Although the court recognized that California's ban has been subject to public critique and that plaintiffs have alleged a valid injury, it nevertheless sided with the state and upheld the ban. Judge John Mendez adopted the government's position that blocking ex-offenders from becoming EMT certified advances the government's legitimate interest in ensuring public safety, as EMTs often deal with vulnerable persons in responding to emergencies. This article is from 2021. It's not relevant. What? Many incarcerated firefighters do go on to gain employment at the California Department of Forestry and Fire, Cal Fire. Yeah, Cal Fire in 2022 hired an estimated 229 incarcerated firefighters, but we're talking about municipal jobs. I don't think they can get municipal jobs still. CAL FIRE partnered with Anti-Recidivism Coalition to develop an 18-month training and certification program. In 2022, CAL FIRE estimated that 229 incarcerated firefighters had gone through the training program and 136 received jobs in the 5 years prior. Yeah, they can be seasonal. They can also be seasonal hires. This article also says that they can be seasonal hires. They simply cannot. They cannot work for the municipal fire department that is unionized, full-time job with benefits. That was what I was talking about. And even then, those numbers are low to begin with. Nay, it's easier to be a firefighter. You know, all the fires are bad compared to a cop where you have to determine between a good black person and a bad one. They treat them the exact same, but it's still hard to do so. Why are you talking shit when you need to look up the law? Wait, what? No one is talking shit. I think that chatter is providing extra information, and I think that that's valuable. If he had brought forth information that I was oblivious to, I mean, if I didn't know, if something changed that I didn't know about, like hiring municipal firefighters that are convicts, then yeah, I would tell that chatter thank you. Marukusu-chan. Anyway, but thank you for the additional clarification. All right, let's talk about the city budgets real quick as well before we continue with the Let's talk about the city budgets because obviously, we have budgetary concerns. Here is LA Comptroller Kenneth Mejia. Seeing city officials in the press ignore the severe impacts of these budget cuts, especially the ones covering for their poor budget decisions to cut a majority of the fire department, the majority of the department's budgets, even after Chief Crowley told them about the impacts these cuts had, is disgraceful. They keep saying, but LAFD got a raise in November. If these fires happen in August to October, would these same city officials then admit that the LAFD's budget got cut in July, where 61 civilian support positions were eliminated and sworn payroll and expenses were reduced? By the way, as far as the civilian positions goes, yes, it's not directly a person that is holding the hose, but it's actually mechanics, for example. It's people that are responding to calls. Okay? It's people that are assigning tasks. Those are the civilian positions. They all play a very important role in the fire department working. When you cut a mechanic, then you can't actually fix the fire engines in time. Okay? You can't keep the trucks running with the same efficiency necessary to combat structural fires all around the city. By the way, the money that they keep saying is being held for LAFD's raise are in this separate account hasn't even been transferred to the LAFD's operational budget as of this date. How do we know all this? Because we're the city's accountant. We know the city's budget and finances. We didn't want to get into the city's budget and finances during these times, but to see the city officials come out and ignore the fire chief's warnings / impacts of the department's budget cuts made us jump in. We can explain how all this works and how we got here. Just scroll down. By the way, what's not being talked about is that Chief Crowley requested $914 million for the current fiscal year's budget, which started last July. Instead, the fire department got $800 million, a budget cut of $17.5 million from the year's prior adopted budget of $837 million. So they asked for $100 extra million, and they got a budget cut, a budget reduction. So in terms of their need, they needed $900 million, but they actually ended up only getting $819 million, which is functionally $100 million less almost than what they demanded for their needs. Okay, how much money do you need, Jesus? You're right. These guys are out of control. I, for one, personally think that if the fire chief is saying we need $100 extra million and they make a reasonable demand for it, it's a reasonable ask for one of the largest cities in the United States of America, I think I'm going to give them that money. Okay? Except here's where the money went instead. And lo and behold, you might be shocked. Okay? Lo and behold, it went to the police department. That's right. That is right. In the second largest metropolitan city in the United States of America, did it go to the fire department to fight fires adequately? No. It went to the police department instead. After we're through these disastrous fires, we will hold a whole day's worth of our usual educational sessions where we